Hello friends, welcome to Technique. This is Nirmal here, and in this video we will be doing a detailed comparison of two flagship level smartphones which are priced exactly the same, 49,999. We have the OnePlus 10T and we also have the iQOO 90. Now there are a lot of similarities between these two devices. Both also have the naming convention, the T variant of these two devices. Now both of these devices come with the Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip, which is the most powerful chip out there for Android smartphones. Both have 8 and 12 gigabyte RAM. In fact, the OnePlus 10T goes a bit beyond, offering 16 gigs of RAM, and both have a really good AMOLED displays, 120Hz refresh rate, Android 12, and cameras are also quite good on both the devices. But which of these is the better value for money device out there? That's what we're going to talk about in this detailed video. So we will be comparing the design, the display quality, the fit and finish, the material finishing, then the software experience, the gaming, performance, cameras, battery, charging, and all the other aspects in this detailed video. So before getting into the detailed aspects, if this is your first time on this channel, do hit that red subscribe button and also hit the bell icon to get notified of all the videos we publish. So let's begin the detailed comparison of the iQOO 90 with the OnePlus 10T. So let's start off with the design aspect. Now you can see here both of these devices have a lot of similarity with the predecessor, because the OnePlus 10T has a lot of design cues from the OnePlus 10 Pro. Now this also has this squarish camera layout, and it has been flushed to the design of the back panel, and it is a glossy finish. While on the iQOO 90, you can see that the design has a lot of similarities with the iQOO 9 Pro. We have a dual tone finishing, the glossy finishing on the top and the matte finish at the bottom. The camera is a squarish layout. So both of these devices look really good in terms of the design aspect. Now it's more of a personal choice whether you like the iQOO 90 or the OnePlus 10T. Now both look really good here. Now if you look at the material finishing of the back panel, we have a matte finish here on the iQOO 90, while it's a glossy finishing on the OnePlus 10T. Now here also you get a glossy finishing. Now in terms of build quality, you can say that the iQOO 90 has a metal chassis with glass on the back as well as front, while the OnePlus 10T has a plastic frame with glass and the glass on the back and the front. Now we have Gorilla Glass 5 protection on the iQOO or other OnePlus 10T, while the iQOO 90 has short sensation alpha protection. So both of these are well protected in terms of display. Now the build quality again looks slightly better on the iQOO 90 because it's a bit more sturdier because of the metal finishing. It feels a bit more sturdier, but the iQOO or rather the OnePlus 10T has slightly better in-hand feel because of the curved aspect. Here it's not as curved as the OnePlus 10T, so the curvature definitely gives a slightly better overall in-hand feel. So that was the design and build quality of these two devices. So in terms of design language, we would say that it's more of a personal choice whether you like the iQOO 90 or the OnePlus 10T. Both look really good. My personal choice would be the iQOO 90 because it feels a bit more different, especially with the matte finish. Although the OnePlus 10T also has a really good finishing, the metal chassis on the iQOO 90 definitely gives it an advantage. So that was the design and build quality, and we personally feel the iQOO 90 has an advantage in terms of design and build quality. Now next let's move on to the display. Now both these devices have the AMOLED display. iQOO has slightly bigger display. Now both of these have 120Hz refresh rate. One is the E5 AMOLED display. You can see here this is the E5 AMOLED display, the iQOO 90, which is an 8-bit panel and it is protected by short sensation alpha, while here we have E4 AMOLED display. This is a 10-bit panel and this is protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 5 support. Now both of these displays are really good. Actually it's very hard to pick these two devices in terms of display experience. You can see that the 10-bit AMOLED panel definitely gives the OnePlus an edge here. You can see the colors are a bit more vivid on the OnePlus 10T and a bit more richer compared to the iQOO 90. So iQOO 90 does offer all the other aspects like the HDR10 Plus support, then the touch response is very smooth, overall experience looks good, the animations are also really good on both the devices, especially for the 120Hz refresh rate. Those things are quite similar on both these devices, but what separates them is the 10-bit AMOLED panel, which gives OnePlus 10 Pro rather OnePlus 10T definitely an advantage over the iQOO 90. So in terms of display, we would be inclined to pick the OnePlus 10T here. Now let's move on to the software experience. Now here we have two devices with two custom UIs. Now both of these are running on Android 12, and you get Android updates in the 3+4 update cycle, so both are quite similar. Now this is the Fun Touch OS on the iQOO 90, while we have the Oxygen OS 12.1 on the OnePlus 10T. So that's a major difference. So let's have a look at the software experience. You can see here one thing what we noticed that the OnePlus Oxygen OS feels more refined, especially in terms of animations. The UI smoothness definitely feels better on the Oxygen OS 12.1 on the OnePlus 10T. Now if you look at the settings also, you can see here it's more refined UI in terms of overall experience. Both offer a plethora of options, additional tools, but we feel in terms of software experience the OnePlus 10T definitely has an advantage. Couple of reasons. One is the smoothness, how optimized the UI is. Now the Fun Touch OS is quite good and refined, but still it is not as good as the OnePlus Oxygen OS, and also it ships with a lot of bloatwares included. That's one thing which we didn't like about the iQOO 90. There are a lot of bloatwares which ships with the device, while on the OnePlus 10T we don't see any sort of bloatwares except for the Netflix app. Other than that there are no third-party bloatwares included, so that is also an advantage for the OnePlus 10T. So overall in terms of software experience, our choice would be the OnePlus 10T with the Oxygen OS 12.1. Next, moving on to the performance. Now here are two devices with the exact same Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip, LPDDR5 RAM, UFS 3.1 storage support, and Android 12, and both come with 8 and 12 gigs of RAM. Now we have tested the 12 gigs of RAM version on both the devices. Now the OnePlus 10T also is being offered in 16GB RAM variant, but we are not going into that, so we'll be comparing the 12GB RAM variant of these two devices. Now in terms of performance, day-to-day performance, both are stellar performers, and there is no throttling issues we faced. Excellent performance in terms of day-to-day usage. There is absolutely no lag or hiccups. App switching is very smooth. Even if you run the day-to-day task, email, application, social media, a bit of gaming, we did not see any sort of issues on either of these devices. The OnePlus 10T definitely had a slightly higher heat dissipation. It did get warm a bit more than the iQOO 90. Now here is one catch with respect to the throttling issue. Now the iQOO 90 does drop a bit of frames, especially when it comes to gaming. Now in terms of gaming experience, you can say that both did perform really well, but there are two aspects to consider here. Now one is the heating. Now if you are very much concerned about the heating, then probably the iQOO 90 was better, because it didn't heat up as much as the OnePlus 10T. Heating was definitely higher on the OnePlus 10T, but what happens is that the OnePlus 10T doesn't have any sort of throttling issues or frame drops, but on the iQOO 90, as a result of a minor throttling, you can see a few frames dropping on the iQOO 90, but again both have really great gaming experience, and also vapor chamber cooling is there. So in terms of heating, the OnePlus 10T did heat up a bit more than the iQOO 90, but overall experience was better on the OnePlus 10T if you are okay with heating. So if you are not okay with your device heating up, then iQOO 90 is the choice, but then you have to live with slightly slight frame drops here and there, but not a major concern though. You wouldn't actually notice these two devices having any sort of major differences, but overall if you look at the finer aspect, probably the performance is slightly better on the iQOO or the OnePlus 10T. Now we have talked about the performance and also gaming. Now both of these devices offer a plethora of gaming options and tools to get the best experience in terms of gaming. Now next let's talk about the cameras. Now this is one area where the iQOO 90 has an advantage in terms of hardware. Now we have a primary 50 megapixel camera. It's a Samsung GN sensor. Then you get a 13 megapixel ultra wide and 12 megapixel telephoto on the iQOO 90, and you get a 16 megapixel selfie camera. Here on the OnePlus 10T, it's a slightly disappointing camera setup. We have a 50 megapixel Sony IMX766 sensor, which is good, but the secondary and third cameras are 8 and 2 megapixel macro. That's one of the disappointing aspects. Now you also get a 16 megapixel selfie camera on the OnePlus 10T as well. So let's go into the camera samples. So let's look at the daylight captures between these two devices. So here you can see that both the producers very similar images. The color seems slightly more vivid or saturated on the iQOO 90, but not by a huge margin. Both of them produces very similar results, and the differentiating aspect is the sharpness levels, where the iQOO 90 is a bit more sharper, and the dynamic range also seems better on the iQOO 90 compared to the OnePlus 10T. OnePlus 10T on the other hand maintains slightly better overall color reproduction compared to the iQOO 90, where the sky is a bit saturated here. So that was the daylight captures between these two devices. So overall, if you look at the quality, the color seems slightly better on the OnePlus 10T, while the overall quality, sharpness levels and dynamic range feels better on the iQOO 90. Now looking at the ultra wide angle camera, here you can see that there is a major difference between 8 megapixel and a 13 megapixel. The sharpness levels are definitely better on the iQOO 90, and also the dynamic range seems better. So ultra wide angle camera, we definitely feel the iQOO 90 is a better choice. Now iQOO 90 also has a 2x telephoto lens, where you can take images with 2x zoom. That's an optical zoom which is not available on the OnePlus 10T. Now moving on to the close-up images, once again we feel both producers are pretty good or similar results. The sharpness levels are slightly better, and the overall detailing looks better on the iQOO 90, and colors are a bit warmer on the OnePlus 10T, but overall quality looks definitely good on both these devices. Now when it comes to macros, that's where the major difference comes in. Now the OnePlus uses a 2 megapixel macro, where the images tend to be washed out, colors are not that great, the detailing is not good. But on the other hand, iQOO 90 uses the 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera for macro shots, and it has excellent macro imaging abilities. So that's one area where the iQOO 90 takes the lead. Now moving on to the portrait images, once again very similar results. There isn't much to differentiate between these two devices, so you can judge how good the portraits have come. We feel both produces very similar skin tones as well. There isn't much to differentiate between these two devices when it comes to portrait. You can take 1x and 2x portraits using the telephoto lens on the iQOO 90. Now when it comes to low light experience, here we feel the iQOO 90 has an advantage with better detailing, slightly lesser noise and clarity, and also dynamic range feels better on the iQOO 90. So even in indoor artificial light too, we can see that the iQOO 90 offers slightly more sharper images, and the noise is also kept to minimal here. So iQOO 90 definitely has an advantage when it comes to the low light experience. So these are some of the low light captures taken with the iQOO 90 and the OnePlus 10T, and you can see that the iQOO 90 emerges as a winner. Finally, the selfie experience, here we feel the OnePlus 10T skin tones are better, while the iQOO 90 has a tendency to whiten the images, or rather whiten the skin tones, facial tones. That's not happening with the OnePlus 10T. So facial tones are better on the OnePlus 10T. The dynamic range and sharpness rates are similar on both the devices. So once again here the OnePlus 10T takes the lead. Now video recording both produces very similar results. So overall, as a camera smartphone, we feel the iQOO 90 has the advantage here. The daylight captures and the low light experience was slightly better on the iQOO 90, but where the iQOO 90 clearly wins is the macro performance, telephoto lens and also the ultra wide angle camera, where these three areas the OnePlus 10T doesn't have a great camera hardware. So when it comes to camera as a whole, we feel the iQOO 90 is definitely our pick of these two devices. Next, let's talk about the battery life. Now we get a 4700 milliampere battery with 120 watt super fast charging on the iQOO 90, while here we have a 4800 milliampere battery with 150 watt charging support. Now both of these devices charge up the device in really great time. It took 21 minutes for the iQOO 90, while it took 19 minutes for the OnePlus 10T. So charging speed is definitely better on the OnePlus 10T. Now battery performance was quite similar. We got like 5.5 to 6 hours on an average on both these devices. We didn't see any major difference here. 10 or 15 minutes difference. Probably iQOO had an edge, but again I wouldn't say iQOO has a clear advantage, but more or less similar in terms of performance. 5.5 to 6 hours screen on time with moderate usage. Again, it depends upon person to person what kind of apps you use. If you game a lot, you might have a lesser a battery, but again that depends upon the apps you run. So that's the battery performance, or more or less we would say both did equally good in terms of battery performance. Now, one of the disappointing aspect of the OnePlus 10T has to be the lack of alert slider. Now, alert slider has been there on all the OnePlus flagship devices, probably above 40k price segment. Now, here you don't see an alert slider. OnePlus claims that the alert slider was removed to make way for slightly higher capacity battery. So that's the reasoning given, and probably this is alert slider is not going completely off. It might come back in the next iteration, but as of now this device skips the alert slider. That has to be one of the bigger omissions on the OnePlus 10T. So that's the aspect which is missing on the OnePlus 10T. Now moving on to the other aspect, the 5G support and connectivity. Now both of these devices supports 5G. We get 9 5G bands on the iQOO 90, while there is 11 5G bands on the OnePlus 10T. Not much of a difference. Both these devices are pretty well covered with respect to Indian 5G bands. Now in respect to the call quality, both these devices comes with 4G LTE, voice over Wi-Fi, carrier aggregation, all those things are supported, and call quality is really superb on both these devices. We tried with Idea and Geo network, so absolutely no issues. Both had really great experience in terms of call quality. Now speaker performance, both have stereo speakers. Now this stereo output was slightly better on the OnePlus 10T compared to the iQOO 90, not by a huge margin, but overall the quality and loudness was slightly better on the OnePlus 10T. Now both of these devices have in-display fingerprint scanners. We didn't see any major differences between these two devices in terms of fingerprint scanner experience. Both performed pretty well, and more or less similar experience, I would say. Now other aspect, we would say that in terms of haptic feedback, that's one area where the OnePlus 10T takes the lead. There is something called as O haptics. You can see here it has very good options here. So let's just take that option, haptics and tones. So O haptics gives you excellent haptic feedback when compared to the iQOO 90. So haptics has to be better on the OnePlus 10T. The O haptics is really great when compared to the overall experience what iQOO 90 offers. So that was a detailed comparison of the OnePlus 10T and the iQOO 90. Now which one should you buy? Now this is a very tough choice to make, because there are a lot of parameters included, including the design, build quality, the battery performance, the cameras, the gaming experience, software experience. So everything combined, a lot of aspects are similar. Now we have trimmed down the features and the comparison to two major aspects here. Now one of these is cameras. Now if you are very much particular about the camera performance, then without doubt the iQOO 90 is the better choice here, without doubt, because it has the secondary and third cameras better than the OnePlus 10T. But having said that, if you are more looking for a better software experience, very refined software without any sort of bugs or issues, and without any sort of bloatwares, that's where the OnePlus 10T takes a lead. Excellent software experience compared to the iQOO 90. The OxygenOS 12.1 is literally the clear winner when it comes to software experience. So rest all aspects, including the battery performance, design, build quality, display, then performance, gaming, almost all of these aspects are quite similar. There is just a minor difference between these two devices. So the only major difference here is the software and camera. Now if you are particular about software, then go with the OnePlus 10T, and you will have to compromise a bit on the camera. But if you are more into camera and you are able to compromise on software experience, then the iQOO 90 is the better choice. So which one do you feel is a better choice? Do let us know your thoughts in the comment section. This is Nirmal signing off with the detailed comparison of the iQOO 90 with the OnePlus 10T. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. Do hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in our next video. Have a great day.